beautiful, full room of people who don't want to be here. We are sad to be saying goodbye. But she lived, Pauline, Aunt Sissy, Pesci, lived an incredibly wonderful life, filled with amazing experiences, lots of wonderful family. And so we can try, even as we're sad, we can try to celebrate the life that she had. I think that most of us who are still looking forward to 96, there are only a few of us in the room that are still past 96, but those of us who look forward to 96 wish that we could have the kind of a blessed end that she had, peaceful. She thought she was going to die many months ago and didn't. I was reminded that this week we start reading from the book of Deuteronomy, from Devarim. And so it reminds me a little bit of Moses here, because Moses knew long ago that he was going to die and his time was at end and he begged not to. I'm not sure that Pauline begged not to, but she had this extra time to talk to people. And the things she said to people and the things people got to say to her were really wonderful, important things. I haven't spoken to anyone who hadn't spoken to her and didn't feel better for having spoken to her in the end. Moses tries to give his swan song. He tries to say, I know I won't be here. This is what I want you to remember about life. This is what I want you to remember. This is how I want you to move forward. And I think that she had those moments to be able to say those things. There's one other thing that I want you to remember today about when she died and when we're burying her. You realize that we are about to start the Perseid meteor shower, and that it is going to be more glorious than any meteor shower that anyone, even the people who are more than 96, have seen. And that there are going to be between 160 and 200 meteors every hour starting this evening. Anytime between midnight and dawn, you will see, even if you're in the city and there are lights blocking, it will be impossible not to see what looks like shooting stars all the time. An amazing scene. It starts now, and ironically or coincidentally or wonderfully, it lasts a week, which is the period of mourning that we would observe for her, the 7 days. So it's kind of a glorious way to think about Pauline and her life and the symbolic spirit that is, I'm not going to say she's at rest. I'm feeling like she's more like the meteors out there. I think that's the kind of person, the way she lived her life, and that's what I think we'll remember her as when we see those meteors. Remember to look out. So each funeral is different, and I think that you'll know that I chose some of the things that I chose for this because of that. She brought me to the house. She invited me to come to her house after she found out she was dying. And she wanted to talk about her funeral. She wanted to prepare for it. And she said a few things. She said she wanted to make sure that the people who were there for her every day, primarily not just family, but the people who were her nonstop companions, that you knew how important you were to her. That was one thing that she kept saying, I've got to say that. But then there was some kind of a poem that she wanted me to read. And she said, the one that we did at somebody else's funeral. So I brought that to her, and she read it. She said, nah, I don't want this one. And so I am not 100%, she wasn't 100% sure in the end which one it was that she wanted. So I chose readings that I think are poemy enough that I'm hoping that it fulfills what she would have wanted. And the child asked, tell me of life. And the sage answered, life, my child, is a mystery. We do not ask to be born, nor do we even understand the meaning of birth, of creation. We grow and we experience life's pleasures and pains. we love. And slowly, oh so slowly, we come to realize that we have become, that we are. At that moment, we humble ourselves before the mystery of life and quietly say, though I knew not, I have been granted the most precious gift of all, the gift of life. And the child asked, tell me of death. And the sage answered, death, my child, is a mystery. It is the inevitable return of the gift of life, the gift which came free to us. We live as the trustee of that mysterious being, of that unexplainable becoming. Yes, you and I are but trustees of life. We nurture it, we delight in it, we give of it to others. And at the appointed time, we sadly, yet with pride, return it from whence it came. The beauty, my child, is that we are, what we have become, remains long after the gift has been returned. It remains as a precious keepsake with our loved ones who live on. Gather the stars, if you wish it so. Gather the songs and keep them. Gather the faces of people. Gather for keeping years and years, and then loosen your hands and let go and say goodbye. Let the stars and the songs go. Let the faces and the years go. Loosen your hands and say goodbye. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ואינם. There are stars up above, so far away, that we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the star that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. In your handout, on the back, there are 2 readings from scriptures. She doesn't want us to read the bottom one. But she let us read the top one, a poem that you can join me in reading. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So maybe what we need to do is this. Everybody lift up their cup. Because our cup runneth over for having known her, and we'll do a l'chaim to her. L'chaim. We know she would have enjoyed that. It's time, isn't it? As long as Mogen David wine. If I wasn't thinking wine, that's not what I was thinking. But if that's what you want, we can do the wine. I don't mind. Anybody here was thinking wine? Just Bill. At this time, I would like to call up Rabbi Jordan Braunig to say some words about Aunt Sissy. I love saying Rabbi Jordan Braunig.
Thank you.
All right, sorry. Make that be close to you. Good.
My grandmother has instructed me to speak into the microphone.
That's right.
I can think of no better way of honoring Aunt Sissy than to speak very loudly. Pauline Gilbert Murov was born on July 25th, 1920, in Fort Worth, Texas. She was the eldest child of her beloved parents, Abe and Ray Marks Gilbert. And she would have to wait nearly 4 years until Ruthie was born, and she could be called Sister. The name would stick. 96 years later, in the last weeks of her life, Pauline, who I called Aunt Sissy, would celebrate her birthday in the company of a few friends and family and her caretakers. For those of us who spoke to her that day, there was something bittersweet in her voice. She had absolutely loved the party they'd made for her, and at the same time, it would most certainly be her last. Pauline had months of knowing that this day was coming, and she lived them bravely, reflecting on the arc of her life. She lived them with pleasure, continuing to have dinner with her sister and accepting the many visitors who called on her. She lived these days maintaining her one-of-a-kind sense of humor. In one of my last visits with her, we were joking about her healthy appetite, and she waved her hand at us and said, "Make fun of me all you want, I can't hear you anyway." That many people called Pauline sister is not surprising, because in truth, she was the member of many families. She was a sister to the Murovs, all of her brothers and sisters-in-law and cousins-in-law that became family when she married Lazar. She was like a sister to Bertha and Elaine and to her countless friends, her mahjong group, her cousins in Texas, and more than anything else, she was a sister to Ruthie, my Mimi. It is because of these lasting bonds that she formed that in the final months of her life, Pauline continued to have a steady flow of visitors. And I have to say that of all the mitzvot that I've learned from being part of this Jewish community in Shreveport, there's no mitzvah better performed than that of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick. To be 96 years old and to have seen so many of her friends pass before her, and still to have a wide community of people coming to check on her, that's what it's meant to be a sister, to be a friend. And though many knew her as sister, or Sissy, or Aunt Pauline, or Aunt Pesci, for Mark and Rita, and for Caroline, she was mother. For Devin and Andrew and Adam, she was grandma, and she spoke lovingly of her children and grandchildren. In easy times and hard, she remained devoted, hopeful, loving. When I spoke to Mark in the days after her passing and asked about memories of growing up, he spoke about a particularly clear memory of his mother taking him as a very little boy to the Glenwood Theater on Line Avenue. She took him to see The Wizard of Oz and then afterwards to get a chocolate soda. And it's such a simple memory. A magical movie, in color no less, a delicious treat, and a mother who loved him. There's no knowing why these particular memories stand out, but we each have them. They're our treasures, our inheritance, our way of keeping Pauline's neshama, her quite unique spirit, here with us. In my earliest memories of Pauline, of Rosh Hashanah lunches, of butterscotch candies that she had out on her table, and backyard barbecues, she was part of a loving pair, Aunt Sissy and Uncle Lazy. For 49 blessed years, Aunt Sissy was wife to her husband Lazar, though he often joked, "We've been married for 40 happy years," which out of 49 isn't bad. They clearly shared a deep and lasting connection. They raised their kids together and saw the pipe yard flourish together and knew how to laugh together. And though in my youth it was Uncle Lazy who made us laugh, Somehow after his passing, Aunt Sissy seemed to pick up the mantle. In reference to her hearing and to the other hardships of aging, on countless occasions I heard Aunt Sissy say, "Getting old is for the birds." I heard some amens out there. And yet there were many ways in which Pauline also grew funnier and more honest and more reflective as she got older. There was something refreshing about knowing that when I would come home and ask Aunt Sissy if I'd let my hair grow out too long or if she liked my shoes, that I was going to get the God's honest truth. "You need a haircut, Jordan. Your shoes look like they came from Goodwill." She was delightfully honest and funny and had a self-deprecating side to her humor that was endearing. She wasn't the least bit self-conscious, and she knew who she was. Arriving at a restaurant, she would reach into her purse and pull out a bib that said, "Miss Clean Pauline." Unless, of course, it was a fancy restaurant, in which case she'd reach for the sequined bib. And though there was no quality that stood out so noticeably as Pauline's sense of humor, she always claimed that she wasn't trying to be funny. She was just saying what she thought, speaking her mind. And whether it was intended or not, she brought out laughter and joy in those around her. She increased happiness in the world she encountered. Yet, Pauline gave more than just her wit. She was generous with her time and her money, supporting the causes that were close to her heart. She was an active member of the Sisterhood of Hadassah, and she showed up for every event at B'nai Zion. I recall that in the days when you could bring your bottles and cans to the main recycling center, she would donate her proceeds to Hadassah, usually around 35 cents, maybe on a good day, 60 cents. I can only imagine that in the coming months there will be some serious discussions at Hadassah about what to do with the budget shortfall, those 75-cent donations. For years, really since the death of Lazar, Pauline was even more of a fixture in the lives of my grandparents, dining almost nightly with Ruthie and Neil, and then after Papaw's death, spending almost every evening with her sister. In these last 20 years, Aunt Sissy transitioned from beloved great-aunt to something of a surrogate grandparent. I speak for all of her Shreveport nephews when I say that her love was steadfast, her pride in us was clear, and her affection was deep. At every occasion, she was there, sharing in our joy, and I'm grateful, and I think we're all grateful to have had this extra love. One of my favorite memories of the weekend of my ordination as a rabbi was sitting on Shabbat afternoon in the backyard and watching Mimi and Aunt Sissy just sitting in lawn chairs soaking up the sun. To witness the lifelong friendship between these two sisters is to know what you can aspire to in your familial relationships. There hasn't been a visit to Mimi's house in my 35 years when the phone didn't ring and it was sister. And to be honest, I don't think I ever went to visit Aunt Sissy when the phone didn't ring and it was Ruthie. At some point in their lives, they made the decision that they were in this together and they would do all the work that it takes to be sisters and to be friends. Pauline would joke that her parents had asked her when they were old to take care of Ruthie and that she'd agreed, but she didn't expect her to live so long. Mimi, there won't be any replacing your sister. There will be a gap in your life that most likely time won't fill. But know that we're here, your children and grandchildren, your family and your community. And we will do our best to live into the legacy of your sister and be present for you. And we'll call a lot. To her Murov family, to Carolyn, Vivian, Lionel, Cecile, and Shirley, Pauline's life was enhanced the day that you all became her family. She loved you so fully, and I know how much you'll miss her. I'm so glad that our families were linked through her. In the past years, even as she became an old woman, and I think at 96 you can finally say she was an old woman, she and Mimi began telling more stories about themselves in their youth. Single girls in their late teens and 20s, encountering a world that was very uncertain. She lived through the Depression and came of age during the Second World War. As time went on, she was able to talk about those days in Fort Worth or at the University of Texas or in Shreveport, and we began to get a glimpse of who she was when she was young, dancing with soldiers, laying the foundation for lifelong friendships with her girlfriends, marrying Lazar and starting a family. It's strange that as she got older, I feel like I received a better understanding of the person she'd always been. Three years ago, almost to the day, according to Facebook, Ruthie and Pauline, Mark and Rita, and Bill and Helene were in Colorado Springs together, taking their moms for a final hurrah in a part of the country they'd traveled in umpteen years ago, as they would say. I remember thinking at the time that I hope that I'm blessed enough to be able to travel into my 90s, to still want to see the world, to want to remember things from my youth. And I hope that I'm lucky enough to have children who will take me. That's what it is to honor your parents. This Shabbat, as Rabbi Jana said, we begin the final book of the Torah, Dvarim, or Deuteronomy. The book is a retelling. In Greek, it means the second teaching, the reteaching. Amazingly, we're not even through with the Torah. We're not through with these first 5 books of the Torah, and already stories are being recounted, retold, reinterpreted. This is part of what it means to be Jews, to remember and to retell our stories, to extract meaning. So too in the context of family stories, we tell them and we retell them again. And we're not done telling stories of Pauline. Her days in our company may have passed, but we have the practice of keeping something present in our lives by telling it again and again. The joy that she brought, the love that she gave, will live on in the stories we recount. 3 weeks ago, during what would be one of my final visits with her, we sat at the kitchen table, she and Pat, just to say thank you to Pat, to Jill, to Courtney, to all of you who took care of Aunt Sissy. She was so grateful every time I talked to her. Oh, they're taking such good care of me. So to say thank you. But 3 weeks ago, we sat at her kitchen table, and she and Pat had been sitting there for a number of hours watching a bird make a nest in a potted azalea plant on her patio. The little bird would venture out and grab twigs and grass and return every few minutes to build its nest. There are a lot of ways to describe Pauline, but the word zen had never come to mind. Yet in this moment, she was so quiet and thoughtful and thoroughly captivated. I've been thinking of this as a final image of her, at peace, watching a sparrow construct a home before her eyes. These were the days when she was preparing for her departure from this world, and here she sat at the kitchen table, witnessing growth and change and the miraculous cycles of life. I don't pretend to know what she was thinking, but all I could think was of the fact that there are manifold connections between beginnings and endings, and that it's a blessing to be able to sit quietly, peacefully, and be amazed at the glory of creation. Mark, Rita, there's no loss like the loss of a parent. I pray that this image of your mom and the sweet goodbyes that I know you were able to share with her will be a comfort in the days to come. You made her happy in the last days of her life as you provided the care and the space for her to depart peacefully. Now, she told me not to go on too long. If she were here, I'm sure that Pauline would wave her hand at me now and say whatever you want about me, I can't hear you anyway. What I want to say, loudly and into the microphone, But what I believe she already knew is that she was loved by a wide community of friends and family, that she was worthy of that love, and that her memory will continue to be cherished.
Don't go away. There was one other thing she said to me when I went to visit that first time after she knew that she was dying. And I hear she said this again, but that she recounted a story about Jordan, that when she knew she was dying, she had already asked that Rabbi Jordan do a eulogy. And she told me the story about how she said, you got to keep it short, there's not a lot to say. And Rabbi Jordan said, it's okay, I'll make something up. So the legacy lives on in the kind of cheerful words that people say that pop out of their mouths, and her legacy lives on in Jordan. We take a moment of remembrance. We take a moment of silence.
El malei rachamim, shochin bamromim, hamtzei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kedoshim utehurim kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat, peshi bat Avraham v'Rachel, shechala le'olama, began Eden, tehei menuchata. Ana, Baal harachamim, hasirecha beseter kanfecha leolamim, utzror bitzror hachayim, et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach bashalom, al mishkava v'nomar. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Pauline's memory be for a blessing, and may we never let the light of her love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all her worthy and righteous deeds, that her memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May the death of Pauline, the daughter of Abe and Ray, awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share may not be severed in sorrow. May she rest in peace, and together we say,
Amen. We rise now for a Kaddish. Hello. It is sometimes difficult to remember that the mourner's Kaddish is not a prayer about death, because we keep the person in our heart so strongly as we say it, and we unfortunately say it mostly, the Kaddish, at times of death. The mourner's Kaddish is a moment for praising God. May the love and eternal connection of our souls give us strength as we turn to recite the words, hallowed by time, sanctifying the name of God. We honor Pauline's memory with the words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. It's found on the inside of your handout. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv vimru amen. Yehe shemei rabba mevarach la'alam ulamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha v'richu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shalama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to Israel, to all the world, to which we say, Amen. May the Holy One of blessing, from whom all things come and to whom all things return, give us light and peace on this day of grief and mourning. And may our service of memory for Pauline bring comfort and strength. Appreciate more than we can say that you came to honor her memory. Thank you. I'm on the mic. Oh, I'm not on the mic. I took it off my head. Please join the family in the foyer in front of Lefkowitz Hall. They have refreshments for you, and it will be an easier visit if you go to the reception area. The family is glad to visit with you in the reception area.